today. Thank you, Peter. That's great. Not sure if many of us have done a lot of automation in the past. We'll give it another minute or so. We've got just to hopefully get so that we don't have too many more miss the start, and we'll see how we go. Okay. Well, I might make a start. We've got quite a bit to get through, and particularly you'll see that I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, and we're going to talk through some examples of what we're doing. So we'll make a start. So today's I'm Greg Bull. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a project director for Cox & Lyons, and today part of our team we've got Trevor Harris. Trevor's one of our senior consultants. Trevor works on a number of our projects, and in particular in recent times, actually before recent times, actually Trevor has been one of our, I guess, our gurus or experts on things like Excel, macros, and VBA, and those sorts of things. And so he's taken to automation like a duck to water. And so it's great that we have Trevor on the team today to share with you some of the examples that he's been working on and has worked on with our clients over the last sort of few months, particularly in this interesting and exciting space for automation. Today is a conversation. If you could enter stuff into the chat box, that would be good. There are members of the Cox & Lyons team will be monitoring that, Trevor and myself included, but also we have Jonathan on the line and Peter Lormitz on the line, and some other members of our team. So as those questions come through, they will respond to those. We'll do a couple of surveys, really keen to gauge our thoughts and where people's headspace and mindsets are at in terms of automation. We've got some information that we're going to provide, obviously, and then get a sense of where people are on their automation journey and what sort of support people are looking to get moving forward. We'll start today with a quick understanding of, I guess, digital transformation and where automation fits, and particularly where in the work that we do, where automation fits in with that. And we do a lot of work at the front line with organisations, and so automation, particularly as it becomes more accessible, becomes a real enabler for a lot of things that we've tried to do in the past with people, but have been limited by technology or lack of technology, or just a lack of available systems to make things quick and easy to do. Speaking of quick and easy to do, today Trevor's going to take you through a number of examples which really shows the power of what's available today in terms of automation, and how actually simple and quick it is to implement, and how you can get because it's not, the cost is really coming down, and how you can really start to get a real bang for your buck in terms of a return on what is quite a small investment in real terms to start on your automation journey. Trevor will talk through those examples. And then we'll just finish up by talking about the approach that we take to automation. We're not suggesting it's the only approach, but given the space that we work in, which is about helping organisations improve their efficiency and effectiveness in what they do, both from a management perspective, but also from people working at the front line, how we see automation has become a real enabler for our business, and more importantly, how it's become an enabler for the people that we work with. So let's just kick off with a very quick survey. I'd just like you to, I'll jump into the survey scene to get a sense of where we're at in terms of our thinking for automation. So this is going to pop up on the screen. So if you can choice one, now that's the I will end that one. That's the wrong survey. It's the second survey. I clicked on the wrong one. So we'll just go backwards. Apologies for that. We will restart that. We will go to survey one. Apologies for that. So if you describe, I guess, where you're at with your automation journey. So it's very quickly select one of the four. We don't have any automated processes and are unlikely to look at them in the next 6 to 12 months. If that's where your organisation are at, please choose the top selection. If you are interested in using automation but don't know where to start, it seems like it might be expensive and a lot of effort, choose that selection. We've started on some processes, it's very limited, and we're still finding our feet. We're getting some responses to that already. We've started automating and having some success. We have a plan to expand further. So if that's where you fit. So I'll give you a few moments to choose those. And we're getting a really good mix of responses coming in. If I'd like everyone online, just to, even if you don't really know, just think of the answer which best fits your organisation would be really useful to gauge that. When we're about halfway through, If you could please enter your response in, would be fantastic. And I think it's in automation is really starting to take shape, and in many shapes and forms. Of the customers I speak to, there are many different approaches that people use. I don't know if any is particularly better than the other, although we think, in particularly the space that we work at the front line and getting sort of quick turnaround and quick results, we think that some of the experiences we have will really demonstrate that it is actually quite accessible. Looks like the voting has ceased, so I will just share those results of what we've got, and you'll see that we've got about seems a majority of people have started some form of automation. There's a concern that it's expensive, a lot of effort, and we'll hopefully talk to that. Some people have done some limited automation and still finding their feet. So hopefully today the stuff we talk about will show that actually you can get up and running quite quickly, and the finding your feet part is potentially faster than you think. And then we have a good group that have started and have got a plan to extend further. And for those in that group, I think what we're going to talk about today may offer some, hopefully, a varied perspective on what you're currently doing and how you might be able to maybe accelerate that move or that transition that you're currently making. So let's get into talking about automation. So digital transformation comes in many forms, and so really for most organisations, what's the best fit for us? And really automation is about using software to create repeatable instructions and processes to replace or reduce human interaction with IT services. What the goal there is, there's a lot of stuff that happens using IT, and what can we do more of to reduce those interactions? The big three are, I guess, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, or RPA, and business process automation. I'll just quickly give our perspective on those three parts of automation or digital transformation. So AI, or artificial intelligence, is really about developing intelligent machines, getting machines to think and work like humans, and things like speech recognition, problem solving, learning and planning are among those. There's some companies on the left-hand side that you may or may not be familiar, but these are seen as leaders in the AI space. The first two, Hippo and Lemonade, are US insurance companies using automation to do things like underwriting. Using artificial intelligence to do things like underwriting. But Lemonade is sort of a leader in using AI to actually do claims processing and having some success there. Icertis is another interesting one where Icertis looks at contract life management. And so what that does is their software essentially reads contracts, be it existing contracts or future contracts, and really takes the place of a lot of the work. So you might have lawyers or procurement people scanning through contracts. This software is used to sort of summarize what the intent of a contract is in order to, I guess, maximize the profit potential, identify any risks and compliance issues, and go by reading the contracts and saving time doing that. You may be familiar with Neuro, or you may have even seen on the news or on some of the magazine programs, either on television or on the internet, of driverless vehicles, particularly I think in Texas, Neuro is based, where particularly since the pandemic started, using driverless or autonomous vehicles to deliver goods to customers. And so these are examples of artificial intelligence. This is really moonshot technology. It's very expensive, takes a lot of time to develop. And for many businesses, it's not mission critical, but potentially will be in the future. I think most businesses aren't in the realms of AI. I think in probably sooner rather than later, AI will start to become much more accessible, and more companies will have access to some form of AI to assist in their work and what they're doing. Robotics, and robotics is probably where a lot of organisations have sort of focused their effort. It's about configuring software to essentially replace an agent or a human or a person working in a business to do the actions that a human might do. It's training these software robots to do processing or part of your value-add process in getting work done. It can be very technical. It does have to interface with human workers. Part of the challenge with robotics is often when organisations decide to start going down transformation and doing some form of digital transformation, looking to automate or introduce robotics, they find that their business processes are currently maybe suboptimal or not great processes. There's no point training a robot to do a bad process. And so there's often a bit of business process re-engineering that has to take place to make robotic works. It can be expensive. Configuration setting up robots is expensive exercise. Usually a robot worker is like a robot worker. So it's one robot typically does sort of one process, and so you might need multiple robots or machines to achieve your robotic outcomes, and so that adds to cost and development time and configuration and those things. That adds to the time it takes to set up, and really in terms of the investment in robotics, it's usually a mid to long-term return on investment. There's a large upfront cost which incrementally over time you'll get your payback. I'd like to talk a bit more about, I guess, and today's, I guess, a theme of the bulk of this presentation. It relates to automation in terms of business process automation. And this is really the sphere that is an organisation that we work in with our clients. And you've heard us talk in the past about Xarion. Xarion is a software solution which automates the I guess, rules-based allocation of work amongst teams. And so it uses automated processes to get the right work to the right people at the right time. So automation in terms of business process automation is using technology to, I guess, execute recurring tasks, things that are routine, are repetitive, manual, often time-consuming, but and maybe part of your value-add process. So there could be things like data extraction or reading emails or reading customer survey forms and those sort of things that the people need to do and then respond to, but they're time-consuming and then they require some sort of action. So these solutions are used to reduce cost. You may have heard of things like Nintex. Nintex are automated workflows. So there's a lot of organizations now that you might have an ERP system or your core business system, and you might have a workflow system like Nintex or a ServiceNow, which essentially manages work between people and your other technologies. So ServiceNow really looks at service tickets and manages work that way. Nintex looks at end-to-end workflows. Because we work a lot at frontline with frontline managers and their teams, there's a lot of work that takes place that we see. So in the process that we do, we look at end-to-end processes and we try to improve things. And so think automation is a product that helps really at the front line in terms of a lot of those tasks that people are doing day in, day out, be it a manager gathering performance data and putting together dashboards and those sorts of things, or frontline staff in the work that they do. There's a lot of repetitive tasks there. And so we find ourselves often working with teams to build better systems and processes to help manage and get that work done. And so that is a form of business process automation. We've in the past done that, and Trevor has been front and center with all that in putting together, it might be macro-based tools, Excel-based tools, or VBA tools to streamline and speed up those frontline operations. Because these things are kind of quite tactical, so your overall strategy might be we need to automate and head down the path of automation. What business process automation does in the near term, it gives you some real tactical opportunity to sort of create capacity and opportunities within your workforce. It's affordable if you go down the right path. It is fairly simple. So if you've got some people within your organization that are particularly good at writing macros or VBA or even doing simple, or quite good at things like Excel, then there's lots of opportunity to automate tasks that you may not be aware of. Because of that, it's low cost, or can be low cost. If you go down a path of, say, a Nintex or a ServiceNow, because they're workflow systems, they do cost a lot more, and they're not as tactical. They're much more of a strategic solution. But things like automation, things like Think Automation offer, and VBA and those tools offer a more tactical solution. And because of that, because you can act on them quickly, you can act on them real time, and you can act on things that are in the here and now, you can get a very quick return on investment. And so that we spoke about at the start, automation being inaccessible, inexpensive, and hard to set up. There are tools available now that start to really challenge those paradigms and really make automation something that I would say most organizations, or I won't say most, I say all organizations can get some real benefit from using these simple type business process automation tools. So in our view, if you, as part of your digital transformation automation journey, thinking about business process automation is really a great entree and a great start. Robotics and AI are longer term investments, are longer term strategic thinking, and you may have things in place to get those set up. But if you're thinking about we're a smaller organisation, or our budgets don't allow this, or it's a bit of a far reach for us, what is a better alternative? And a real alternative is thinking about BPA. It's fast, it's simple, and very cost effective opportunity to use that. It really gives you the ability to look at, I guess, non-value add tasks and get them done by an automated process, and starting to think about, okay, if I'm freeing up all these processes, then the time gives my frontline people, my frontline managers, a much greater amount of time to add quality and service and value to our customers. And so the thought process needs to be, what do our customers need, and what can we do to add more value to them? Start thinking about what are those routine tasks that could potentially be done by a very simple, quick and easy automation software or solution. And then if we can get those done, then what opportunities would that then create for our customers? So in the past, I think the automation and robotics has been a real internal motivation. It's really been productivity and efficiency focused. And so what that has often meant is the mindset is, what can we automate? Let's automate something. If we automate it, they must get a bang for our buck. And there's a number of organizations that we've worked with in the past have gone down this path. And it has actually been quite problematic at times, because what happens is, in an end-to-end process, you can automate some things, but not all things. So it actually starts creating other problems like bottlenecks down the pipe, or your robots aren't getting fully utilized, because particularly in robotics, a robot can kind of do one thing. And so if it's only got 100 of those things to do and it gets them done in 15 minutes, then it sits idle for the rest of the day, and those sorts of things. So having that lens of productivity and efficiency has brought a number of organizations unstuck, because it is quite expensive to set up and they're not necessarily getting value for that. Part of that is once organizations go on a automation or digital transformation journey, it gets put in the bucket of IT and often the suppliers. So there's a number of suppliers I've already spoken about before. So the motivations of IT and suppliers is okay, we need to automate, we need to put in a robot, let's find a place to put this and let's make it work. And so that may or may not end up producing the best results. And that then drives this sort of real process-centric kind of view. The natural inclination for organizations is to look at your end-to-end value-add process and say, how can I automate that? How can I build a better mousetrap? And so what you find is there's a large investment for really incremental gains. Because the robots can't do everything in the process, you get this sort of staccato kind of a benefit happening with multiple robots operating in part of the process, but the bits the humans are involved in aren't necessarily greatly impacted. And so you get a dilution of your investment. What we've found is, and working at the front line with organizations trying to improve business efficiency and effectiveness and outcomes for customers, the automation almost comes as a secondary concern, because our primary motivation is, how do we get better customer outcomes? And in the past, we were using tools like Excel and dashboards and VBA and macros to essentially speed up and create time and space for frontline managers and staff. And so what that does is, if you start thinking about what can we do for our customer, then all of a sudden those pain points that start to slow you down in your ability to meet your customers' needs, they become the obvious targets for, okay, can I automate those things? As opposed to what can I automate? It's the lens is changed. Okay, I have this product or service to do for my customer. These things are slowing me down. And sometimes these things are within the process, and sometimes this is the non-core work. It's the value add, the admin work, the work you have to do on the side that supports the other work that needs to be done. And so the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, is not always in the business process itself. It can be outside. It can reside in two places. But the fundamental question is what's impeding my ability to add real quality and service for our customers? And what things are slowing us down? And are they do they then fit the bill of being repetitive, transactional, easy to do, that sort of thing? And therefore, if I can automate those things, that suddenly creates this world of opportunity in terms of the outcomes you're delivering your customers. So rather than saying, how do I become more efficient? The question is, what is impeding our ability to meet our customers' needs? And of those pain points, and when we work with our clients and we map out end-to-end processes and we do critiquing sessions, we look at what the pain points. There's lots of things that are exactly what we're describing: repetitive, low value add, or there's a huge time component to get them done, and they add incremental benefits to the process that are opportunities to improve those things. And so in trying to find a better answer to using spreadsheets and macros and VBA, we come across a tool that Trevor has become quite expert in building solutions for our customers. And so, Trevor, I think there's an opportunity now for maybe you to talk through some of those examples and talk to the team about, just to talk to us about, I guess, some of the things you work on, and then explain, I guess, firstly, these examples, and then how they might apply to, I guess, more broadly to the cohort of people we have online today.
Sure, Greg, thanks. And hi, everyone. Hi, Petula. Yeah, so I'll just take you through 3 cases where we've worked through some workflows. Just note, there are only 3 cases, but there's hundreds of workflows that we could work through in terms of what Think Automation can do. So if we look at the first case, this is in a production environment. So essentially, we have a supervisor and his leading hand who are out on a morning run. So they're at a viewpoint and they're looking down and they're seeing that digger 101 is not operational. So that digger should have been operational at 6 a.m. Essentially, and they're seeing it's not running. So what the supervisor can essentially look to do now is to say, well, I need to understand what's been happening with that equipment since this morning. So what he can do is he can pull out his cell phone and essentially in an SMS, he can note the equipment number. So digger 101, he can put a request of what he wants Think Automation to do for him. So he wants to get a performance report for the equipment. And lastly, he puts in the email address in which he wants Think Automation to send the report. Now, upon receiving the SMS, Think Automation will essentially review the credentials of the supervisor. It will then assess to say, well, is the supervisor authorized to receive the information? If so, it will generate a report and create a PDF format of that report. It will then attach it into an email document and send it to the requested email address. All of this done within 10 logical drag and drop steps within Think Automation. So that's essentially, if you look at the line of logic writing there, that's essentially all that is needed to automate this process. Now, upon receiving the report via email, the supervisor and the leading hand can essentially now review the critical parameters of the equipment to get an understanding from a data perspective what's been happening with the equipment. This then enables him, when he engages with the operator, to have a clearer, more understanding from a data perspective, and also when they have discussion around what are the actual root causes for us not meeting our production targets. And then that delves into a better, more engaged root cause analysis. And in this case, it was the decision point around getting more trucks to the digger. So that's a simple example where in an environment where a supervisor needs real-time, almost real-time information in order to assess what's going on the ground, he can then review that information and then engage the operator and have more robust engagement and root cause analysis with the operator. Now, this integration with the SMS...
Those rules are quite...
Sorry, Greg?
But those rules are quite easy to set up, and I can imagine there's many applications you could use for that.
Yes, so the rules are essentially drag and drop. So within Think Automation, there's almost 100 or more triggers which you're able to do, and it would be simply drag and drop the trigger in order to action the necessary process. So another example, another example, and we know is a pain point for a lot of our clients that we work with, is processing invoices. Now, invoices can come in various document types. So in the case, it could be a text, it could be in emails, PDFs, and images. Now, Think Automation is the bread and butter is in terms of the text, emails, and PDFs, and then we can also link it into an OCR in order to extract information from images. So we're looking at a case here where largely looking with organizations about processing invoices. So this could be a water bill, a telephone bill, your gas, your utility bills that you need to process. Now this can generally come in an email, but it has an attachment that is either a PDF or a scanned document. And we'll look at those two cases of a PDF and a scanned document, and what does Think Automation actually do? So essentially, through an email or picking it up from a folder within your network or drive or database, Think Automation will pass the email. Now, when we say pass, it essentially converts that document into text. So that's essentially what it would look like. So it's taken the PDF, it's converted it into line-by-line text from what it can read, and then within Think Automation, once we've got the input, it's around what do we want to extract from that document or information or text. This is where we use the extractor finder or extractor field. So in this case, we want to obtain from the invoice the due date for the invoice. And what we can do is we can see is in the extract finder field, the text is replicated on the right-hand side. And when we put a name to the field we want to extract, so in this case, we've named it due date. In the extractor field, we ask us what do we want to look for in the past text. So we want to look for due date. And then what we want to look for next is the line underneath the due date. And as you can see on the right-hand bubble, it's highlighted what it will extract, which is essentially the due date, which is the 28th of August, 2020. Similarly, what we want to do potentially next is get the total amount for the invoice. So same logic, in the extractor field, we name the field we want to extract. So in this case, we named it total amount. Once again, what are we looking for? We're looking for the total amount in the text, and we're looking for the next piece of information below it, which is the $464. And so forth in terms of extracting the customer name and extracting the address. So this is essentially Think Automation pulling in the document, passing it into text, and then you selecting what information you want to use, and then it's up to you on how you want to process it. So you can send it via a trigger to update an Excel file, a CSV file, update a database, update a template. With a simple drag or drop function, you can essentially add it to wherever output you want to or action it. The second example is now, this is where it's a scan document. So this is where it's an image, and this is where Think Automation can link into cloud-based servers or existing OCRs in order to now pass that information or extract it. So in this case, we've linked Think Automation with Amazon TextTract, and what we can see is, if we look at the first text box, if we actually look at the scanned document, it's highly legible. So it's really difficult to see what's there. But still, in terms of the robustness of TextTract, we're still able to extract the client number, the due date, the amount as well. Similar for table 2, that's more legible, and it's easily able to extract or, pass information for extraction. Once again, as in the prior example, we can look for certain table lines that we want and extract the relevant fields to then process either into the database, a CSV, an Excel file, or any other system which we can integrate with Think Automation. Now, this might look like, well, that seems like a very difficult process. It's actually, Think Automation works in 3 key basic steps. The first one is the input to your process. So this is, how does Think Automation receive it? So it could be, it's linked to an email account or your Outlook exchanger. It then essentially will pick up the attached PDF files or scanned documents. So that's the input into Think Automation. The next part is, once it's input or taken the document or the information, it's what fields do you want to extract? So what information do you want from that? And that's, as I've shown in the prior slides, of how do we extract the fields we need. And then the third step is really, what do you want to do with that? And that's the triggers in terms of executing the remaining part of the workflow. So that would be updating the database, example, updating the CSV file, whichever actions you essentially want. It might be, if there's a high amount on the invoice, it can actually be triaged or escalated to a manager. So there's multiple logical if-else steps that you can put, And in terms of the processes I've just described, the logic is shown on the right here. So essentially, within those 5 or 8 lines of triggers is essentially the automation for PDFs and scanned documents.
So Trevor, just quickly back on that. Sorry, Trevor. So what I'm hearing is that it doesn't have to be bills and water bills. This could be any sort of data source where you know you need to get this data from, and you want to get it from point A to point B, and the rules very simply take the data from multiple different sources and can populate spreadsheets, dashboards, whatever, and then you can use that data for other workflows and other things that you're working on. So that's there. Is that right?
Correct. So think automation is an integration system. Think of it as webbing between your ecosystems of whichever software you have. So whether it's your CRM, your Google Drive, your LinkedIn accounts, your databases, it forms a web of how does it link between all these and integrates those systems with simple drag and drop functions. So it's pull this information from the CRM, load it into an Excel file, send it to a customer, send an SMS. So you're able to interweb those multiple systems, and that's why it's referred to as the business process automation, is you're able to automate and link those business processes.
And talking to some clients that I know sorry, just Trevor, the people that have used a similar thing is this really data integrity becomes whereas where you're relying on manual entry in the past and maybe needing additional QA or quality assessments and checks, the ability for fidelity of data is dramatically increased. In fact, I know one organisation that uses a very similar process for, actually they use this to do their QAing. So they're able to read documents to check that they're right before they go out. So it's very useful and saves a lot of time.
I mean, a recent case study was working for a brokerage company around, they have to assess multiple quotes, and which they were manually extracting the information. And we were able to essentially pull 6 different types of quotes, integrate it into a single template sheet. Their focus was not about entering the data, it was about assessing and making an evaluation. The key critical part of that was, yes, giving time back to the person who does the assessment, but also eliminating what you refer to as the manual errors, which could have a significant financial impact.
Okay.
Now,
a third example you want to take us through?
Yes. So the third example, and this might link into even the marketing side of the organization, which we'll see later on. So in terms of looking at how your staff engage with customers, I think automation has a sentiment analyzer built within the software. And the question might be is, well, what would the sentiment analysis be useful for? So one side is from the customer perspective is, well, we're able to better understand the behavior of the customer and the dissatisfaction, if there is any. So essentially, think automation can look at email discussions between the agent and the customer. If there's voice recordings that are translated into text, those can also be assessed. And essentially, we're able to then determine the sentiment of the conversation between the operator and the customer. Now, this could be important for the third point there, which is really around how this can be useful to train or onboard new staff as quick as possible to get them to the service level that you want them to do on how they engage customers. So it's almost that real-time feedback on how we're actually having that conversation with the customer. The second side could be in terms of the marketing. In terms of the second point is, how is our services or products being viewed by our customers? So what's the positive, negative discussions? Once again, think automation can read information from social medias, so it can read in from your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn account. It can read in from web pages, and we'll see later on how it can actually read from web reviews in order to train the sentiment analysis. So in order to use the sentiment analysis, we have to train it. So we have to teach it on what to look for and how do you determine if it's a positive or negative sentiment. So in this case, what we did is we went onto a review site. So in this case, we've got an insurance provider. They've had over 8,000 reviews. What we did is we set up a quick think automation workflow to scrape the reviews. So on the left-hand side, we selected the poor and bad reviews in order to get the negative sentiment or the negative training. And then on the right-hand side, we selected the excellent and great, and then essentially scraped the reviews using a workflow built within Think Automation. Now, this is the workflow that I use in order to scrape the reviews, and within those 10 lines of logic, once again, I don't think I've used more than 10 lines of logic for most of my workflows. We were able to scrape over 1,400 positive reviews. So it was obviously heavily biased more in terms of the positive reviews, and what was available on the web page was just around above 120 reviews. So within less than 10 minutes, we were able to essentially open the web page, scrape the review, load it into a text file, each single review, and then basically put those into 2 subfolders, positive reviews and negative reviews. Now, within Think Automation, this is where we use the Sentiment Analyzer control panel. So this is the interface where we now use to train the sentiment analysis. So it's quite simple. When we go to the file train, what we do is we select the positive file path. So we've saved all our positive reviews. Now, that doesn't have to be text. It could be emails. It could be PDFs. In this case, I've saved it as a text file. And then I've also put the directory path for the negative reviews. And then I've simply selected train all. And then Think Automation has then processed and analyzed those text messages in order to train our sentiment analyzer. And in the top right-hand corner, we can see how many were processed for positive, which is over the 1,400, and the negative is the 1,200. Now, once it's processed, we've essentially now trained our sentiment analyzer with a data set. We can now test it. So in this case, I've taken a review from another insurance provider where there was a negative review from this customer around them not getting all the right or all-included services within their package. What I did is I've just pasted that into the text section of the control panel, and when we run the sentiment analyzer from our data set, it indicates from the analyzer that it gives a score of 1. So 1 is the most indicating that it's a poor or negative review. If the score is 100, obviously it indicates that it's an excellent or positive review. What it also does is it highlights in colored red are those negative associated words that are trained from the sentiment analysis. On the other case, if you had a positive review, you would see highlighted in dark blue words. So that's indicating to you that there's a lot of, from the artificial intelligence and the machine and the natural language processing, it's indicated that this is significantly a negative review. Now the question is, okay, what can I do with the sentiment analysis? So as I said, one thing is you're able to take information from various sources. You're able to then obtain a sentiment score, and then the decision is up to you is what do we want to do with that? So we can use that score to assess how effective our agents are in having conversations with customers. We can triage it if we identify that there's a bad email sentiment. We can triage it to a manager. There's multiple or hundreds of combinations that we can select. We might want to segment our customers based on their feedback. So it allows you then to make logical trigger steps in terms of what you want to do with that information. If you're running a marketing campaign, you can determine the sentiment and score of how effective that marketing campaign was. So really nifty tool in terms of assessing what the conversational tone of the conversation is going, and then determining what we want to do with that information. Once again, the sentiment analysis doesn't have to be trained just to measure the feedback. It can also be used to determine if a text or document is a sales request or if it's a maintenance request. So you can actually train it based on certain request types as well, and then trigger it to do certain actions. Okay, those are the 3 I've highlighted, but yes. Now, while we think Automation is amazing, and many other people globally is, firstly, it's a multi-award winning software. So it's one, in terms of, it was the #1 tech tool in terms of productivity and efficiency. It was a finalist in the AI and machine learning for 2019. Essentially, whatever you think you need, or whatever you think automation can automate it. The great thing as well is, as we've highlighted, it's open-ended, it's fully customizable. In terms of cost, so one price, you can do hundreds of workflows. We've only showed 3 or 4 workflows, but it's up to you how hard you want to push it, and it can process up to thousands of processes, automate thousands of processes. So you're looking at a fixed cost of $6,000, simple, intuitive to set up. The logic around workflows is also very intuitive to use. It can be run on a single machine to run in a specific area, in the finance area, in a specific department, in the operations team, or can be run enterprise-wide across the business, across a single machine. In terms of a risk perspective, it can be run locally on your system, so you can have no external interaction if it's required, or you can integrate it with cloud-based services as you desire. And a key factor is also in terms of unlimited transactions. So it does not cost you a transaction when you're processing through Think Automation.
Yeah, so I think what we've found is in the work that we've been doing and using, and you can still use things like macros and VBA and those sorts of things, and we still in instances use that. We've found that a tool like Think Automation, and using the 3 examples that Trevor has used. The first one, if you're a frontline supervisor or you're a manager and you need real-time dashboard data to understand what's going on, it doesn't have to be on a mine site. It can simply be what's happening in my team at this moment. Those requests to Think Automation can generate and be used to grab data from different sources and provide you and update your dashboards sort of very quickly in real time without the need to go and extract data and update things. So it's a very quick and easy tool. What I really liked about the example with the mine site was the text message. It verified the credentials of the person sending and making the request. That was good. Obviously, reading documents and putting data in, that's fundamental. That's a time-consuming exercise. And I think sentiment analysis, it creates a real opportunity to, I guess, reading documents, reading emails, and using them to evaluate and assess a number of things. So whether it be customer sentiment or it could be used as a training purpose or whatever. So we've found that using these tools to speed up and create time for people has been really useful. So what I'd like to quickly ask, another very quick survey, is to say, what we've spoken about today, has this changed any perceptions of what automation can do, particularly in relation to simplicity and effectiveness and potential costs? So I'll jump across to our second survey, and so that's the first survey still. And if you could quickly make a choice of the presentation, has it not really what you described is what I already knew, so choose that. Somewhat, I can see that automation doesn't have to be expensive and complicated and is available to all organisations. I'm keen to find more. Definitely, automation is much more accessible than I imagined. We should look into it further and see how it can help. And particularly, I think, yes, thinking about automation from what's impeding meeting our customers' needs perspective versus cost savings makes sense. So having a different lens and perspective around about thinking about how you use automation. So getting a few answers coming through. It'd be good if we could get a sense of where people are thinking. Yep, we got some people agree that maybe taking that different lens. It's not about productivity so much. It's more about customer outcomes. It's much more accessible, and we're looking into it further. Absolutely. Okay, it's good. Well, no one said it's what we've described is what you already knew. So hopefully we've provided some additional information that maybe people weren't aware of, which is fantastic. If we get a couple more responses, would be good. Okay, I might just be conscious in thinking about time. We're going to end it there, and so we've got, and we might jump back to the presentation. So. Okay, so just very quickly, just like to wrap up. So how do we get the most out of automation, and how do you do it cost effectively and get a real quick return on investment? And I think the key for us is from our perspective, it's not to say that automation, AI and robotics isn't the way to go. I think they're strategic decisions. But if you're working with a more tactical frame of mind, so what are some of the tactics we can use within our a long-term automation or digital transformation strategy, I think business process automation is really a really good way to go. It's a way of eliminating lost time, and particularly when you think about the things that are preventing us from delivering better quality and service for our customers. The approach we take is really, as I said, it's very similar to our normal work that we do with clients. We have a look at what your business process is from a diagnostic perspective in terms of those outcomes that it's delivering to your customers, and trying to work out where those pain points are. And then looking at those particular pain points and saying, okay, are these candidates for automation? Now, it could be to help your managers get better, faster, real-time dashboard information to make better decisions. It could be about freeing up time for your frontline staff in terms of parsing emails or data extraction or keying in utility bills, those sorts of things. Then quickly, it's about saying, okay, of those opportunities, which ones offer us a real potential capacity savings and gains? Now, when I talk about capacity, this is the important part. This is about finding time to do more things for your customers. It's creating. If we're getting rid of the low value stuff, then what more or higher value work can we do, and how do we then change our business processes to improve that? And then finding a simple tool to automate that. Now, we've been using Think Automation because, I guess, as you've seen there, it's very cost effective. It's very simple to use. But by the same token, there are other ways you can do it. You can use VBA, you can use Excel, and there are other automation tools out there as well. If you have people in your organization that are particularly skilled at things like VBA and Excel and macros, then Think Automation, they'll probably pick that up very quickly and easily as well. Very similar to what Trevor has done. Trevor is our resident expert on Think Automation, and Trevor, has been quite easy to pick up and learn and use the tool.
They would be very happy with you because, as I said, in terms of the first case study, I replicated that with VBA in the oil and gas industry that I was working, and it was very time consuming and a lot of code. Where now it's within 10 drag or drop functions. So they'd be very happy with you.
Okay, so anyone with some sort of knowledge or expertise of that, this is actually an enhancement, improvement again on using things like VBA. So that's another great win. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I hope this has been a useful presentation. We think that automation is just going to get more. We're seeing that already with all the work that we're doing now with our clients at the front line, improving their business processes, is wanting to use these sorts of tools to free up time for their people. As you know, as we come out of the COVID and the pandemic, delighting our customers is becoming more and more important. So the more of the work that impedes that we can sort of get done by these tools to enable us to dedicate more time to servicing the needs of our clients, particularly the high value needs of our clients, is really important. So most of you on the line probably know someone from Cox & Alliance. If you want to talk more about how the role we play in this, I think the tools are there. The role we play is really helping people identify which are the areas best to automate. So give us a call, speak to myself, speak to Trevor, speak to Phil, Jonathan, or Peter, or whoever else you know at Cox, and give us a call. Alternatively, send us an email at thinkautomation@Cox & Alliance and have a chat. Sorry, Trevor?
Yeah, I was going to say, even if you think it can't be done, let us know what the problem is. We're pretty sure we can do it. So even if you think it's not something that can be automated.
Think Automation say.
Yeah, if you can think it, you can do it.
You can think you do. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Have a good afternoon.